Asleep, then I'd be a dream. blessing of both of your parents, please come, join hands for the wedding ceremony. You may be seated.
Welcome to all of you who are joining in on YouTube to be a part of this wedding day. To celebrate, even though we are in a time of COVID and it seems like everything is different and weddings are different as well. Every wedding is special, and mostly we remember them for the things that do not turn out exactly as planned. And for those of us who come from a Mennonite background, to have a wedding with only 6 people in the room is truly unique. And we will remember every wedding from this time of COVID much more vividly because it will be different from those that come before and after. It's good that you could join us. And it is important in this time of social distancing that we are not socially distant. Marriage is not a 2-person job. And by choosing to join in to celebrate this day, you're also choosing to be a witness to the wedding vows and to help Ashley and Joel to keep on striving to fulfill them. On this day, the words are easy, but not every day will be like today. And there will always be days when we need family and friends to encourage us, to remind us of how we felt on this day, and to continue to put on the effort to build a better marriage. The text that Ashley and Joel have chosen is from Ephesians chapter 5, and it starts with this verse: "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." A good thesis statement for those who like English and writing essays. The purpose for today's passage is to encourage us to submit to each other, and in particular with our theme here, to submit to our spouses. And then Paul goes on and he talks a little bit more about each role. For wives, the word he chooses to say is that wives need to learn to submit, to put the wants, needs, and desires of the other before your own. Someone once said that there's 5 stages in marriage. The honeymoon stage is the stage that is what Paul is describing here. The honeymoon stage is when both parties are focused on meeting the needs of the other. And it's a wonderful place to be. And if anybody knows how you can stay in that honeymoon stage forever, that would be great to know, because unfortunately, there's other stages to marriage. We get to the tension stage, when you're still working at meeting your spouse's needs, but you feel like some of your needs are not being met. And that quickly leads to the manipulation stage, where you try to get your spouse to meet your needs. A successful marriage finds ways to keep on returning to Paul's ideals, to the honeymoon, to find a way to say, I choose to not worry about my needs and focus again on meeting the needs of the one that I love. There are some additional stages. There's a stage where one person gives up getting their needs met, and usually that leads to a separation. And so we need to keep on finding ways to move back to God's ideal, Paul's ideal, of putting the needs of others before ourselves. It's good to remember this day, because today is a day when those attitude, that focus, and that commitment is easy. And it's wonderful. The attitude and feelings of today's are ones that we will need to rediscover over and over again. As I am often found of quoting, "A good marriage is one in which you love the person you marry." So much of our world's focus is on trying to find the right person to marry the person you love. But in marriage, the success is to love the one that you chose to marry. Paul here compares the role of the bride to the church. As the church submits to Jesus, so brides should submit to their spouses. How much does this church that we're broadcasting from, Moral Gospel, submit to Jesus? How much does the church that I'm a pastor of, St. Adolphe Bible Fellowship, submit to Jesus? How much does the Orthodox Church submit to Jesus? And the answer that we could give that's accurate in all cases is they submit as much as they choose to. As much as we choose to. Jesus does not make his church submit. I would imagine that if Jesus is still capable of being tempted, he would be tempted sometimes to make his church submit. But that's not the way he acts. There's nothing in this section about a man forcing his wife to submit or demanding it. In fact, actually, it goes against everything this passage teaches us. Ashley, for you, the challenge is labeled submission, and it involves putting Joel ahead of yourself. Then Paul turns to the husband. So Joel, your challenge is labeled love. What does love mean? It has a lot of meanings in English, but we don't really have to study the Greek to know what he means, because he lays out for us the example and the model of what love is supposed to be. In the example of Jesus, Jesus displayed love for the church by giving his life to save her. Jesus displayed love by making his bride beautiful. And in case it's still not clear, he returns to the theme of marriage one more time, and he says we are to love our brides like our own bodies. In the same way, when our bodies get hungry, we feed them, and when they get sleepy, we send them to bed. So we care for the one that we love. Jesus put our need for salvation ahead of his own need to avoid death. His desire to keep on living in the perfection of heaven against our need to escape the reality of love. And Jesus, in love, chose to put the needs of his church ahead of his own. So Joel, for you, the challenge is labeled love, and it involves putting Ashley ahead of yourself. Our passage in Ephesians ends off with a quote from the very first marriage in Genesis chapter 2. Quoted here by Paul, quoted twice by Jesus, and central to our understanding of marriage. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. It's interesting to think back to that very first wedding, a wedding that had only 2 people in attendance, so even smaller than this one. A wedding in which God was the officiant. Wouldn't that be nifty, to have a wedding where God would do you the officiant? And the only witnesses were the animals. In comparison to that, we have a pretty large wedding gathering here today. Jesus God in that very first wedding says that for marriage to be successful, you need to separate from mom and dad. You need to be joined together with your spouse, and you need to become one flesh. At every wedding, we have this discussion when there's unity candles. The discussion is about whether we will blow them out when we're done lighting the candle together. And there's good reasons to keep them lit, and there's good reasons to not. But Ashley and Joel have chosen to symbolize this by blowing out their candles. It's a symbol of the fact that marriage is complete. It is total. They have left behind the old life, and they are joined together fully and completely in this new life till death do us part. Joel and Ashley, we turn now to our wedding vows. Vows which you've had a chance to think over and to contemplate. Vows that have deep commitment, no escape clause. Vows that symbolize the love that you have. Joel, for you first. Do you, Joel, take this woman standing in front of you, Ashley, to be your wife? Do you promise to live together according to God's plan in the holy bond of marriage? Do you promise to be a faithful husband, to protect, honor, love, and cherish Ashley in prosperity or adversity, in sickness or in health, and to keep yourself unto her alone as long as you both shall live? If this is your commitment before God and these witnesses, then answer, I do.
I do.
Do you, Ashley, taking this man standing in front of you, Joel, to be your husband, do you promise to live together according to God's plan in the holy bond of marriage? Do you promise to be a faithful Christian wife, tender, loving, true, and supportive, in prosperity or adversity, in sickness or in health, and to keep yourself unto him alone as long as you both shall live? If this is your commitment before God and these witnesses, then answer, I do.
I do.
As you have committed yourselves before God and these witnesses to live together as husbands and wife, as a symbol of your love and commitment, you may now exchange the wedding rings. And now for the part which we enjoyed practicing so much yesterday. Joel, you may now kiss your bride. All right, we're going to move over to the signing of the register and the unity candles.
Here we are, we found the day like we'd always prayed. What I see the future bring to you and me one day. Hold on to this day and keep inside your heart such faith that we'll walk along the path God made. And our Father's spoken, and this life we've chosen will help us follow your plan. And I can't profess that I understand it, compliment my hand, like heaven made my heart to compliment your heart. Heaven gave you love to compliment my
It is my honor to present to you for the very first time Joel and Ashley Thiessen. Tuned in to watch this virtually. Who would have thought we even knew what this was a year ago, but now we know about virtual weddings and all these kinds of things. It sounded almost at the beginning like it meant imaginary, but they're just as real as any other kind, but they're just a lot less in person. But as we are closing off our marriage ceremony, we're going to be moving into the speeches. And so if you just stay on the live stream, what you will be getting next is the speeches that have been recorded by the various ones. Encourage you to stick around to listen to those. If you have booked a slot to drive by and you need to leave at some point, you can just pause your playback, come down here to the church, celebrate with us, extend your wishes to Ashley and Joel. That would be great. Oh, the wedding's over. Your wishes to Joel and Ashley. That would be great. And I will also tell you that if you would like to choose to just see one or two of the videos, if you stop the live stream, all the individual speeches are up on the webpage. And so instead of listening to them all now, which will be flowing here in just a few seconds, you also have the option of going back and then just listening to a few of those individually. We are looking forward to seeing many of you as you drive by, those of you who are close by, those of you who are far away, who are unable to make it down here to greet us today, socially distanced in your car with masks. Thank you for tuning in and for being a part of this wedding day and a chance of celebration. God bless, and thank you.
For those of you who do not know me, my name is Megan, and I am Ashley's sister. Thankfully, Ashley is 2 years older than me, and I haven't had to go a single day of my life without her as my best friend / life mentor. One of the most amazing things about Ashley is how she genuinely cares so deeply for the people around her. When Ashley believes in you, she is 100% for you. If you have Ashley on your side, she makes you feel like you can do anything. Throughout my life, I've basically always gone to Ashley first with any sort of issue I've been having. I would tell her my woes and she would listen with intense care and always make me feel better in the end. I eventually realized this was a trait that I really wanted to have too, but it didn't come so easily to me. One night we were lying in our beds and I told her that she should tell me a struggle that she'd been having so that I could practice being sympathetic and supportive. I don't remember what she said exactly, and maybe that also points to where I was at in the sympathy game at that point. But I remember lying there trying to think of something nice to say, and in the end I just said, well, that sounds really hard. And then we just went to sleep. Thankfully, by the inspiration of Ashley, I have been able to improve at being sympathetic, and she even tells me her struggles sometimes now too. Joel, you have found something really, really good in Ashley. She will always support you and be there for you through all the joys and struggles of life. And I know this because she's always been there for me, despite all my flaws and my shortcomings. And so I know she'll always be there for you. She is fiercely loyal and deeply caring for the people she chooses to love. and she has chosen you. Anyone who is loved by Ashley is better off in life, and clearly you have realized this because you have wisely decided to marry her. I want to leave you with this quote I read once. It says, "Happy marriages begin when we marry the one we love, and they blossom when we love the one we married." I pray that as you love each other today, you will continue to choose to love each other through the rest of your lives. As Christ chooses to love us despite our flaws and our weaknesses, may you always choose to love and support each other, no matter what, as a true testimony to God's amazing love for us. I love you both.
Hi, Joel and Ashley. It's my honor to be able to share something with you on the day of your wedding as Joel's oldest brother. I was thinking a little bit about when Joel was a kid, and one of my dreams, I guess, for Joel, as much as an older brother can have dreams for a younger brother, was that Joel would become a professional athlete. I wanted to become a professional athlete. I thought Joel could be too. And so I remember setting up like a training camp, a baseball training camp, setting up mattresses in the basement in our house in Landmark, teaching Joel how to slide onto those mattresses, like sliding into a base. I remember Joel being a hockey goalie and me taking all kinds of shots on him. And obviously that dream now, unless Joel, you're a really, really late bloomer, probably the dream of you becoming a professional athlete is dead. But one of the other things that I especially even more so wanted for you, Joel, in the past 15 years or whatever, was that you would come to know the love of God in Jesus, that you would come to experience life in Him. And I have to say, of all the people that I knew in my life, you were probably one of the least likely people that I thought that could happen to. I prayed for it, but I don't know if I really thought it was a possibility. A few years ago, I was visiting Manitoba with my wife and kids, and we had some conversations where you talked about your openness to Christian faith. And I remember that just kind of blew me away. That just shocked me that you would be thinking that way. And then you came to this full confession in Jesus. He saved you. He worked in your life. And just last Christmas, visiting you again in Manitoba, spending that time with you and knowing that I had a brother, not just biologically, but in Christ, has been such a joy for me. It's been one of those things that I thank God for again and again. I also remember years ago, just after my first child was born, and long before you came to Christian faith, Joel, you were visiting us. And I remember you telling me how much you wanted to kind of have a wife and to have kids. You looked at my life and you wanted a life like that. And I remember being surprised that my, drummer rebel brother would want to share in what I assumed to you would look like a pretty kind of boring, mundane life. And of course, you and I both know, or at least you're going to find out pretty soon, that marriage is anything but boring. Especially as a follower of Jesus, it's going to challenge you. It's going to shape you as a disciple like nothing else. I'm reading this book right now called Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas, and I just want to read you a quote from him. He says, "If you want to be free to serve Jesus, there's no question, stay single. Marriage takes a lot of time. But if you want to become more like Jesus, I can't imagine any better thing to do than to get married. Being married forces you to face some character issues you'd never have to face otherwise." And so, Joel, you're entering into this, and Ashley, you're entering into this relationship that is going to challenge you to become more like Jesus. And I'm so filled with joy that you're making that decision, that you're entering into this. And Joel, I'm so grateful that you have found a woman who I don't know you very well yet, Ashley, but I know that you want to become more like Jesus as well. And so the two of you being on the same page going into this it will be such a gift to both of you. So Ashley, I want to say a huge welcome to the family from me and my wife and my kids. We're so excited to get to know you better in the years ahead. We're sorry we can't be there in person for this, but we know that we're going to spend time with you in the future, and we're really looking forward to that. Joel, I just want to leave you with what you already know is your calling as a husband. I want to remind you of those verses from Ephesians 5 where Paul says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up to her to make her holy." Joel, you are to love Ashley as Christ has loved you, giving himself up for you. And so that's my prayer for you, Joel. It's my prayer, Ashley, that you will love Joel and that together you will become more like Jesus. We celebrate this day with you, and we pray for God's richest blessings on you this day and in the years ahead.
Hi, I'm Bonnie, Ashley's youngest sister and one of her bridesmaids, and I'm also her housemate. So I'm one of the lucky few who got to watch Ashley fall in love while Joel was still a little bit oblivious to the situation. They spent, time after church talking together, and they met at young adults groups, and Ashley would come home and have to pick apart every conversation. Did he like me? Did he not like me? Does he know? Is it obvious? Should I hint more? But Joel was going to China, so she had to be kind of careful with her thoughts and feelings, and for months she kept everything under wrap, hoping that maybe something would change, that this man that she was starting to be really attracted to would somehow stay. And in a sense, COVID was a major blessing to both of them, as they had a chance to get to know each other, and as Joel was forced to stay in the country. It became really clear to me that Ashley was in love the day she didn't come home from church on time. I knew she had something planned, but she was already an hour late and I wasn't sure what was going on. And when she came home, she told me she had missed the bus. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Ashley's very organized, and she doesn't just miss the bus 3 times in a row. Joel might have missed the bus. He probably at that point had no idea what was going on. But my oldest sister, the oldest of 4 siblings, knows how to organize things and keep things in track. That was intentional. And despite the China situation and not knowing what was going on, she was starting to make a move. And after months of hints, some subtle, some glaringly obvious from those of us on this side, he finally caught on and asked her out. Living together with Ashley has really highlighted some of the things that she does that most of you know about, but some of you do not. She is very organized, and unlike Tash and I, she likes to plan things. And she doesn't just plan a few things, and she isn't just slightly organized, but everything has a place and everything has a list. And from what I know of Joel, his life is a little more spur of the moment. So have fun trying to figure out how that will work. Thankfully, Ashley has learned from my mom and figured out how to plan spontaneous so that she has room to do creative things on the spur of the moment that we all thought were spur of the moment, but she had planned in her schedule for them to happen. Ashley has lists for everything. Everything has a spot on the list, and that's how she keeps everything on track. Unfortunately, this means she sometimes forgets the things not on the list. So Joel, if she's ever nauseous or tired, maybe feeling a little bit sick, might be good to ask her if she's eaten in the last, 10 hours, if she's drank any water. These are things that seem to forever slip past her, and are a little concerning some days. But despite all of this, she's my older sister, and I look up to her so much. Joel, you have found an amazing girl. If you ever want to play a game, just walk around the house and think of a feeling over and over and over until you start to actually feel it, and see how long it takes her to pick up on it and ask you what's wrong. Because Ashley always knows when something's wrong. And it's such a blessing. No one understands how you're feeling better than she does, because she's feeling it with you, and that's incredible. If I have one piece of advice for you, Joel, it's let her talk when she's processing something and it may seem confusing and random and not make any sense at all. But Ashley processes things out loud. And unlike you, she can't figure it all out in her head. She needs someone to just sit there and listen while she thinks out loud. Her thoughts are her words, and they're not necessarily well put together. So show her some grace when she's emotional and upset, and shower her in love as she tries to process things, and just stay silent, because 99% of the time, she figures out the answer on her own. Although, when she doesn't, and she gets stuck, I know from hearing her talk about you that she appreciates the help and the clarity that you bring, and that your relationship together is something that makes her stronger and makes her better as a human being overall. It draws her closer to God. And we're grateful that you're a part of this family and that you get to join us, and for everything that you've done for MASH and will continue to do.
Hello everyone, this is Robert here, and this is Milo. We're celebrating Joel's and Ashley's wedding, and I just gotta tell you, I prepared myself a script just because I'm not good with speeches, and also because they asked me to keep it short. So I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna be reading off the screen. So I've known Joel for the last year and a half. I've been attending Moral Gospel Church for a while, and that's where Joel and I met for the first time. I remember once on a Sunday morning entering the church and hearing these amazing drums playing. I'm also a musician. I remember right when I heard these drums playing, I told myself, this guy's real good. That's where my appreciation for Joel began, right there, even before seeing who was actually behind those drums. Well, that morning I spent a good 15-20 minutes listening to Joel and worshiped him, rehearsing for the service, and appreciated his playing. Once the music stopped, I went in the sanctuary and I approached him and complimented him for his playing. I remember saying to him, "Hello man, that was very awesome. There is only one other guy that can actually drum like that, and that is Mr. Ginger Baker, who is the best drummer in the world." Joe replied in a very humble way, "Thank you, bro." That's why and when I nicknamed him Ginger Baker. After the survey, we chatted a little bit about our music, influences and our visions of our music. That day I also told Joel about my involvement with the Saturday Night Blues Cafe at the church and my band, and Joel right away jumped and said, "Bro, we should jam." And that is when our journey began. I remember the first time we jammed, we connected right away with one another in such a way that we started thinking of a side project band together, which we're still working on today. After the first time we jammed together, we started hanging out, and what made Joel very important to me, and still is his kindness, compassion that he has for people, and the most important, his faith. Joel and I had a connection since the beginning, and we developed such a brotherhood together. The thing that I appreciate most about Joel is how he always points everything to God. His faith has been a blessing and encouragement for me and many others. Last year, my wife Cassandra and I got baptized on the same day with Joel, and we had the opportunity of listening to Joel's testimony. That was very amazing and very encouraging to see how God worked in his life and what a beautiful person he became after he met God. Joel and I used to hang out after church sometimes at Timmy's, and we would talk about, some life issues, the past, catching up, and about our accomplishments that we had during the week. And Joel always encouraged me to seek God for everything and give him my issues. That is the kind of person that Joel is. A very loving person, kind person, with a big heart and always ready to rock. I remember that last year Moral Gospel Church young adults group planned a wing night out at Smitty's, and I remember getting there and seeing Ashley and Joel along with all our friends from Morrow. That evening, they announced their love for one another. I was and I'm still so happy and proud of these two. They're so cute together, by the way. This is not on the script. After a while, Joel told me that he wanted to propose to Ashley and that he was very nervous about it. I think he was even sweating. One evening, we gathered at one of my friend's house for a jam and to kick our side project off. And after the jam, I drove him home. And on that evening, Joel told me how much Ashley means to him and how much he loves her. And he still is very eager of starting their life together. Joel is such an amazing guy with a big heart, very kind, and crazy on the drums. I'm personally very honored to be part of their special day and also very grateful of their friendship. I love you, bro. Joel and Ashley, I'm so proud of your accomplishments so far and for those to come. I wish you both all the best and may God continue to bless you and your marriage. I love you both and I'm very happy for you. God bless you guys.
Hi, my name is Tasha Reimer and I am Ashley's cousin. When I was writing this speech, then I was having trouble finding some good stories that I could tell about Ashley, and I was thinking and I just couldn't think of any that I thought would be good. And I realized that the reason I was having trouble was because I think that the stories that you tell at weddings are usually the stories that are like the fun, spontaneous adventures. And I'm not saying that Ashley and I don't have fun, spontaneous adventures, but the best way to have those kind of stories with Ashley is to give her 24 hours notice, and that's not being spontaneous anymore. That's just making a plan. I'm not saying that everything I do with Ashley is planned. I've lived with her for a year and a half now, and some of my favorite moments have been from when we got home from work or from school or wherever we were, and we just found each other in the house and chatted for a while and processed our days, because we're both verbal processors, so it's nice that we lived together for a while. And I just loved being able to find Ashley somewhere in the house and just sit down and chat with her, and talk about the interesting things that we had done or seen. And I think that's pretty spontaneous. I never planned it out. I later found out that Ashley did plan these things out. She put on her list at the beginning of the day that at some point I was gonna come into the room and we were gonna have a nice chat together. And I had never felt so baffled by someone, but also just so loved when I found that out. That's something that you should definitely know about Ashley, is that she loves people so well. She'll make space in her day and in her heart for people, and she treasures those connections. She loves building people up, and she sacrifices herself and her time and her energy to do that. As we have grown up together, I have loved seeing Ashley mature and be transformed into somebody like Jesus. I was able to see her go from a kid who didn't know what she liked or what she didn't like or what kind of people she should associate with or pursue to be friends with. And now she's just grown up into this beautiful and confident woman who is so sure of herself and especially of her place, just firmly in the center of God's love and care for her. It's easy to see how Ash does like surface level things, the way that she cares for people and the way that she loves people. But I've just so loved getting to see the deeper level of her heart and the soft heart that she has that just shines steadily through all of her actions is just so beautiful to see. And it's just a picture of God's beautiful creation that's there in Ashley, just in the center of her. I'm sure many people are saying about her, or have said about her already, that she is an oldest child, and she has a lot of those characteristics. She likes to take charge. She likes to make lists. Oh my goodness, she likes to make lists. And she likes to keep track of the people who are close to her. But she never does that in a way that is with a selfish heart, or trying to look good for other people, or getting other people to accept her. But she uses her gifts to love others well. So yes, she's an oldest, and as a youngest, sometimes I worry about that. But she uses it so well to love other people. And she just builds up and encourages people around her. And that's just a really beautiful thing about Ashley. I have been so blessed to be close to Ashley for so many years. And I'm really privileged to see the ways that she continues to grow, especially now that she's continuing to grow with Joel by her side. Ashley, you've encouraged me and you've helped me to be a better person in so many more ways than I can put in a speech. I've loved seeing you get all Twitter-pated about Joel, so Twitter-pated about Joel, and I've tolerated the way that you come home dancing and singing after you spend time with him. I'm so glad that you guys will get to dance and sing together for the rest of your lives. I'm really glad that you found someone that you can continue your journey with, and you have a partner now with whom you can spread God's love, and that's a beautiful thing.
Hello everybody, hello Joel, hello Ashley, and family and friends. It's an honor to be speaking here in my virtual presence. It's an honor to be speaking on behalf of Joel, and I figured the best way to do that is just to talk about how I know Joel and how I appreciate Joel. So, I met him in my second year of university. I can't even remember exactly the class that it was, but it was either logic or it was a specific philosophy class. But at first, I can actively remember seeing this kid with this poofy haircut and who sat in front of me 2 rows in logic class and who constantly talked about philosophy and answered all of the professor's questions. I remember thinking there for a brief moment, like, I don't like this. I don't like this nerd. But I'm happy to that I was shown that I was wrong. This nerd would eventually become a great friend of mine, and he would actively play a prominent role in me realizing some education goals, while being an amazing friend at the same time. And I don't remember exactly how we started our friendship off, but I'm pretty sure it was over some philosopher. But from there on out, Joel and I would spend our breaks together. We'd yammer on about this and that, whatever, and develop a true friendship. It truly was my favorite memory when I think about it. It truly is my favorite memory as I think about my undergraduate degree. And ever since then, our friendship has developed, our lives have changed. Most importantly, Joel found his faith again, and ever since then, his life has made a turn for the better. I'm so proud of you, Joel, for what you've become. So, the things that I appreciate about Joel are mainly 3 things. The first is something that we've all experienced, I'm sure, is that he's an excellent teacher with an abundance of patience. I remember sitting at my condo with him, and I'm trying to teach him a video game with a keyboard and mouse, and he tells me that he's never ever played it, so he didn't have the coordination. And I was super frustrated because I thought that everyone had these basic skills. It was difficult for me to try to teach him. But at the same time, Joel was able to help me learn linguistics and grammar, something that I was horrible at and I had no idea either. but he was able to he was able to navigate my frustration with the ease of an experienced professional. So it's still a fond memory, and it makes me laugh. And because of that, I know for a fact he's going to provide his children with the first-rate education. And the kids are going to know how to read, they're going to know how to write, and they're going to know how to contradict you nonstop with all sorts of linguistical knowledge. That's a fact. Another thing about Joel is he's an amazing writer, he's an amazing drummer, and he's an amazing artist. He's poor at video games, except for one, which he seems to be the best at in the world, which is weird, but that's Joel for you. So one of my the reason why I talk about Joel's reading or teaching abilities is because most, if not all, of the writing skills I developed stem from Joel. He sparked my interest in reading and writing, and he helped turn me into the writer that I am today. And I've tried to take those lessons and teach them to my fellow students. Just the other day, I taught a friend what a subject and predicate are, and I still remember that lesson that I got from Joel in my condo, as I learned what a subject predicate are, how to use a comma and whatnot. Now, granted, I wasn't as I wasn't as great as a teacher as he was, but I was still able to help, and it was just a funny instance. It happened last week, and it just reminded me at that time with Joel. Another thing is, like I said, he's an amazing drummer. In fact, Joel showed me what a skilled drummer looks like or sounds like. For the longest time, I thought a drummer was just a person that hit things. I still do, but I used to as well. And Joel showed me that a drummer not only hits things, but they can actually make music. And I was astonished. Like, it's impressive. Who'd have known? And last but not least, Joel's a great friend. I like to keep my group of friends small, and the friends that I do keep, I may not get to see all too often, but when I do, it's as if no time has passed at all. Joel is no exception to this. He's ever supporting, always happy to see me. He's a first-rate friend, and I'm excited to share in the happiness that this marriage will bring Ashley himself, and of course myself. And Ashley, I've heard you're a really good baker, so I'm going to share in some of those baking skills. Can't wait. And for all the points that I've just listed, I believe Joel's going to make an excellent husband. Ashley, I'm sure as you already know, Joel's a bit of a perfectionist. I imagine him trying to actually become a perfect husband, and I smile. I don't know what such a mythological being looks like, but I'm sure Joel, as with most things he does, will figure out a way how to become the best at it. Now, with all that said, I can say with pride that because of Joel, I know more about writing than some law professors. I can say with ease that because of Joel, we have all learned something valuable. And I can say with certainty that because of Joel, Ashley will be happy. So with all that being said, I would like to propose a virtual toast to Joel and Ashley. To Joel and Ashley, may this blessed day continue on in the backdrop of your memories as a reminder for that love that you two feel for each other.
Ashley gave me the title of Mom 25 years, 8 days ago. She has always loved being with people, and as a baby would only need to visit one of the older ladies in our church to cure her of her fussing and unhappiness. This was also apparent when Megan was born. Ashley did not want to be alone and was agitated when we put her to bed at night, until we put her baby sister in her room with her. Ashley had an inquisitive mind, and that too started at a young age. We would often find her asleep with her head in the doorway of her room. This way she obeyed us by staying in her room, and yet could see and hear what was going on in the rest of the house. Her curiosity and need for learning has continued as she spent 3 years at Steinbeck Bible College and is now working towards her education degree at U of M. Ashley also has the gift of being intuitive to those around her. Many times she has stepped into the door of our house and asked who is having a bad day. She would know something was not right and then proceed to find out who had the issue and help them deal with it. Ashley loves to mentor and teach. She will make an awesome middle years teacher. COVID has made wedding planning and just spending time with Joel and Ashley a challenge. I have been thankful for technology so that we could video chat and message with each other. We love you both very much, and I would like to encourage you with a few verses from Ephesians chapter 3. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom his whole family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the saints, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen.
Ashley and Joel, it's really good to be part of this day and to celebrate it with you and to think back a little bit and to remember. And I got particularly involved in Ashley's life when a second child came along to distract Mama and Grandma's attentions. And we got into the habit on Saturday mornings that we would go driving around the church to various church families. And sometimes we left in the morning and we didn't come back till after supper. And it was just something that Ashley really enjoyed as a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. Those formative years, she would often on Saturdays come with me as we went around visiting. And she also came along with us when I would do guest speaking in various churches. And we noticed right away that, and I often wondered, even then, what impact this would have on her personality, because it was clear that things were changing for her. One of the things is that she had a passion for church. And when we would drive around in Saskatchewan or Manitoba, if we went by a school, then she'd often pipe up from the back seat. If we went by a church, she'd pipe up from the back seat and ask, "Hey Dad, have you ever been to that church?" And lots of times the answer was yes. But if I ever said, "No, I've never been to that church," she'd say, "Let's go there sometime." And most kids don't really like going to new churches, but Ashley loved going to new churches with Mom and Dad. It was an expression and just a fun time for her to be able to do that. She also got out of that a passion for ministry. And we saw that in Ashley as she grew up. She went to SBC, in her trip out to China, the Philippines, and just a passion that she has for doing ministry, for reaching out to people and caring for them. I always sort of suspected that Ashley would marry somebody who was interested in either missions or pastoral work, and it seems like she has found someone that's just down that line. Joel, you have that passion, both for missions, and interestingly enough, you both have a heart for the work that's going on in China, but also in your plans to attend seminary. And so we kind of look forward to exploring with you and seeing where God leads the two of you and both of your passions to do ministry and to care for people. Trust that together you can help others to fall in love with Jesus and to grow closer to Him and to follow Him faithfully in life. I pray that you would have a marriage that is filled with love, and that your marriage and the love in it would serve as a model of what Christian love is supposed to look like. Many blessings on your life together, and Joel, welcome to the family.
Well, hello. I'm here as the father of the groom to tell you some things about Joel, share a bit of his life, my experience with him in life. Joel was born November the 28th in 1992 on a night when we were expecting a winter storm. At least if I remember the situation correctly, that's what happened at the occasion of his birth. And as it turned out, Joel himself created a bit of a winter storm for his parents. That's because Joel was a very unhappy infant. He cried almost incessantly and slept very little. We needed to be holding him all the time, and it was hard to manage life and sleep with him in those early days. If I remember this correctly, there was an event where his mother took him to the doctor to talk about how hard this was, And the doctor tried to console his mother by telling her that Joel was likely going to become a very successful lawyer. I think that the doctor was just trying to help Mom feel better, but he also perhaps was thinking that this exemplified in Joel a characteristic that would be persistent and dogged, and some of that may in fact have been true. Joel has been with us for a good number of years now. I'm grateful for a lot of them. His growing up time, we were living in the small town of Landmark, and I think that he had a childhood that was comfortable and pleasant, and he was often, most times, a very enjoyable young child. He began school a little early, and his parents were unsure whether he was ready or not, but the kindergarten teacher, who was a fixture in Landmark, said, he's okay, he's all right, he's going to do okay. And he did do fine with school, with stuff. When he was beginning grade 1, our family moved to Guatemala. I thought I would tell you this detail. The junior high girls and high school girls in Guatemala in our school, we were in a kindergarten to grade 12 school where I was a teacher, and the girls, the older girls, thought that Joel was the cutest thing they'd ever seen, with his glasses and very short haircut and white skin, of course, and they thought he was quite terrific. Joel enjoyed school there, we think. He had good friendships. He continued on to be a pretty social young fellow, moving into elementary school when we moved to Calgary, and into his junior high years. Always seemed to have friends around and be in good relations with others. Joel's life changed dramatically. I was going to say, yes, Joel wondered if I could share some sort of memories of childhood. And my memory of Joel's sort of elementary and into junior high years were his eagerness to just play sports and to have me as dad join him. And in particular, his passion became playing some hockey, street hockey, and playing goal. He loved playing goal, and we often cleared the garage out of the cars out of the garage as cooler weather came in, and set up the hockey net in the garage, and I would take shots at him. He loved being a goalie, and he continued to enjoy playing goal and floor hockey later on into his young adult life too. Something that I appreciated doing with him. Also coached him in some junior high basketball and appreciated being able to do that with my son. As his sort of teen years drew on, we moved back to Winnipeg, and I lived with Joel for some time. Those were times where we had some good communication times together, and at that point in time, later in Joel's teen years, already in mid-teen years, we also played some music together. That's another memory that I share with Joel in his teenage years, let's say, when he began playing drums in our church worship team in Calgary, and on occasion I joined in with guitar and vocals, and on one occasion at least we joined together with a few other musicians for an entire package of music at a church event. Appreciated that about Joel. When we moved to Winnipeg, Joel would have been almost 18, I guess, and he very quickly connected with other young fellows who were interested in music, and for some time I provided rides for other musicians to come to our house where the drum set was, and music was played in the basement. Appreciated being able to assist Joel that way and be a part of his life. What also developed through the teenage and into young adult years was a rejection of the Christian faith that he had grown up with, that of course his parents hoped that he would hold on to, and so we lived with that experience. And then a few years ago, as Joel entered university and took some religion courses, he started to talk to me more about religion again, to sort of ask some questions and to relate things that he was hearing and learning and checking them with me. And we had some really good conversations, and it was exciting to see Joel consider faith options in his life again. And of course, encouraging to me as his dad, involved in church ministry lots in my life, to see him return to a faith in Jesus, to choosing to follow Jesus in his life a few years ago. Tremendously grateful for that part of what has transpired in his life. And also really, if I'm thinking of this as a bit of a wedding speech, really glad that he has found a relationship with a solid Christian woman like Ashley, that they are embarking on life together with a desire to be faithful people to following Jesus, wanting that to be a significant piece of their life together. And I just wish them all the best and God's blessings as they begin a new chapter in life and develop a life together lived under the sun. And I'll conclude there.
Hi everyone, my name is Lorraine Dorsey and I'm Joel's mom. It kind of breaks this mama's heart that I can't be there to celebrate your special day today, Joel and Ashley, but our thoughts and prayers are with you. So Joel is my baby. He is child number 4. And even though he was the youngest, Joel was very vocal in what he wanted and what he needed. Our favorite family story is when Joel was so little he could barely talk. He was still in the high chair. We were sitting around the supper table and he says all of a sudden, "I want a wife! I want a wife!" Of course he wanted a knife, and it was really amusing and funny. But I'm so glad, Joel, that God granted your wish and you got a lovely wife, a beautiful bride. So Joel was a very cute, sweet little boy, but he was a champion debater. My goodness, he could argue and debate till he would wear me out. When he was growing up, I'd often say, "Joel, I think you should become a litigation lawyer." But God had other plans for you, didn't he? Joel's been in quite a journey in his faith and now in love. In the Bible, it says in Proverbs, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and finds favor with the Lord." And you definitely have done that, Joel. So Ashley, Terry, and I want to welcome you into our family. We love you as our daughter-in-law already, and we love the way you love Joel. Our prayer for you is that your marriage will be blessed with peace and joy and contentment and a whole lot of love. May you so truly be blessed. We're hoping that someday soon we will be able to come and celebrate with you, hopefully in this coming year, and have a big party to celebrate your wedding day. We love you. We miss you. Have a wonderful day. Mwah.